Hello everyone, this is a video lecture on more information about writing introduction, body paragraphs and transitions, and conclusions. There are three documents in this video lecture that I will be sharing with you. All of these documents can be found in the course document tab in Blackboard, so be certain to look at them. And so let me bring up the very first one for you, which will be writing introductions. So there we are. Um, so in this document about writing introduction, this gives you a little bit more information about writing introductions than that earlier document called the basic essay format. When you think about writing an introduction, you need to think about three parts of an introduction. And those three parts of them are the lead, the bridge, and the thesis. What the lead does is the lead is something that grabs your reader's attention. And so there are three different types of leads that you can write. You can write a funnel lead. And what a funnel lead is, it begins with a very broad general statement, and then it narrows itself down to your thesis statement. So what it does is it moves from a larger issue and then it narrows down into the specifics of your thesis statement. A descriptive lead is one that creates a picture or an image for the reader. So for instance, if you're going to write a story, write an essay about your identity, maybe you'll want to begin by painting a picture of yourself or something like that. And then you can move from that to your thesis statement. And then an anecdote is when you tell a brief story that introduces your topic. So once again, in terms of, let's say that you're writing a paper about identity, maybe you will tell a story where someone questioned your identity or you were questioned about your identity. And then what you can do is you can use that as a way to introduce the larger paper and the topic that you're going to discuss in your essay. So you want to read over this carefully because there's like different ways to do that. What a bridge is something that connects the lead to your thesis statement. So the bridge serves as a kind of transition. So that lead is what you've used to grab your reader's attention. The bridge is what moves from that attention point to your thesis statement. And then the thesis statement is the focus of your essay, what it is that you're going to discuss. Here are some examples of good thesis statements. Like for instance, playing basketball will improve athletic skills compared to one that's not so good. Playing basketball is great. So for a thesis statement, you want something that you can support. You want something that is very specific, and you want something that you can build upon. So the more you fine-tune your thesis statement, the stronger your paper will be, because that gives you more that you can do. One of the things that you want to avoid doing in your introduction, you want to avoid saying my paper is going to be about, I think that. Try not to be vague, and don't list facts and don't ask questions. I know that a lot of us have been used to doing that, but those don't really set up a good argument. Try to be as specific as you possibly can, make a claim that you have to support, and make your claim that you can make the strongest possible argument. And that's why it's better to be specific and not to be vague in general. Because when you're vague in general, then it's very hard to establish a strong claim. What you see here is putting it all together. So this gives you an example of lead, bridge, and thesis. So the lead is the yellow part, the bridge is the green part, and the thesis is the blue part. So let me just read this first example. So this is the lead, which is the yellow. The life of a teenager in modern America is not always pleasant. He or she is faced with a multitude of conflicts and problems, many of which seem almost impossible to overcome. Most of these problems center around school, which is not surprising considering that the teenager devotes an average of 8 hours a day to school and school-related activities. So this is the lead that begins with a very broad approach and then narrows it down. The bridge, which is just this one sentence, is since school is not an option, teenagers need to be more aware. And then this is the thesis. Primary problems created by school are the intense pressure for good grades and the even more intense pressure of peers. This is the thesis statement. This is the argument that this student is going to make in this paper. Notice how this introduction doesn't have questions. It's very specific. It's not general. It's not vague. There's no, in my opinions, there's no, I think there. So look how strong that is. The second one is where someone uses a introductory descriptive lead. So I'll just read the lead here. On a cold October day, an explosion is heard. It echoes on and on as if it were beckoning for help. Then suddenly all is still and the earth shudders in an interminable silence of total decimation as the nuclear blast is finished. And then we have the bridge, and then we have the thesis statement. So these are just examples that you can use. And then there's one more example here, and this is like for the anecdote for writing introductions. So as I said before, go back through and read those carefully. The next document that I want to share with you is body paragraphs and transitions. And as I said before, the body paragraphs are the most important part of the paper. And the body paragraph has three parts. It's the topic sentence that establishes the main ideal of the paragraph. Then it's the supporting details. The supporting details are the evidence that you use to explain, illustrate, or support the main ideal. And it's the longest part of any paragraph. And so be certain that the supporting details very clearly the main ideal of the topic sentence. And then the concluding sentence can do two things. It can sum up that paragraph or it can connect to the main ideal of the thesis of the paper. So for instance, let's look at this one example here. So the yellow is the topic sentence. Organisms are highly organized structures that consist of one or more cells. Even very simple single-cell organisms are remarkably complex. So that's the topic. That tells you what this paragraph is going to be about. But then here's the supporting detail that explains and illustrates that topic sentence. So here, notice how this part is the longest part of the entire paragraph, and notice how it goes into more detail. And then you look at the last sentence, which is in blue, and this is the concluding sentence. And so here, and I'll read this one. Next, we will look at how these specialized cells come together to form organs such as the heart, lung, or skin, and organisms will be discussed. What this concluding sentence does is it works as a transition. So what it does is it summarizes what has been done in this paragraph, but then it prepares your reader for what's going to come in the next paragraph. And you see that not only with the mention of the word next, but how the author also tells the reader what will happen in the other part of the paragraph. The transitions are very important because what they do is they establish a sense of unity between the different parts of your paper. And so they connect one argument with the next argument. So you want to make sure that those transitions are there. I mean, there are two ways to do transitions. A very easy way is just to use a word such as, next, or accordingly, consequently, initially, moreover, finally. A more complex one is to pick up a sentence from the last paragraph and use that as a part of the next paragraph. So for instance, here, let's look at this one. And I'll just read this description here. A more complex method is to end the previous paragraph with a sentence that can be picked up in the next paragraph. And this is from Ngugi Wa Thong's essay from Decolonizing the Mind. So the previous paragraph ends with this sentence. To control a people's culture is to control their tools of self-definition in relationship to others. And then the next paragraph begins with, for colonization, this involves two aspects of the same process, the deliberate undervaluing of people culture. Notice how the this in the next paragraph refers back to the last sentence of the previous paragraph. And so that is how you establish that connection between paragraphs and ideas. So it's something that you want to do as well. And the last document that I want to share with you is about writing conclusions. Writing conclusions can be very difficult in a sense because with a conclusion, one of the things that we've always told about a conclusion is that you cannot introduce new information. And so oftentimes what we end up doing with our conclusions, we end up just repeating what we've already said in the paper, which that is fine, but you want your conclusions to do a little bit more than that. So what this document does, it gives you some different ways of how to approach your conclusion. One of the things is you can use a powerful quotation, because sometimes using someone else's words might capture something that you can't communicate as well. However, if you end your paper with a quotation, and don't let the quotation be the last word. And what I mean by that is you can start your conclusion with the quotation, and you can give the quotation. So you can quote Benjamin Franklin or Barack Obama or John McCain, whoever you want to quote. But then you need to do something with that quotation. So you step in and then you connect that quotation to what your argument has been. So like for instance, look at this example here. William James once said, act as though what you do makes a difference. It does. So that's James' quotation, but that's not the ending. The ending is when the student says, James' statement can also be applied to citizenship because the actions of a good citizen are like a rock being thrown in a pond. The ripple spreads out, causing other peoples to become good citizens. It is for this reason that practicing good citizenship is imperative because our action as a community can make a difference. So even though that this student used a quotation to begin the conclusion, the student then elaborates on this quotation and connects that quotation to his or her main point. Another way to conclude a paper is present a climactic moment or lesson learned from the essay. And this depends on the type of essay that you're writing. Another one is to connect your topic to the future. That, for instance, so maybe the topic that you're writing about has relevancy for future generations. And if that is the case, then that will be a good way to conclude that paper. You can end your essay by posing a meaningful question. The question that will allow your reader to continue to think about the issues that you've addressed in your paper. And let's look at something else. And the last one is the one that is the easiest one to do, but also the one that I want you to try to avoid. So the easiest one is just to summarize your main argument or your claim. So you just kind of go back and you state what you've already said in your paper. But as I said before, this is the one that I like the least, and that's why I left it as number 5. Because you don't want to do that, because you're essentially, if you do this, you're just telling your reader what he or she has already read in your paper. So you want to try to do more than that. Some things that you don't want to do in your conclusion. Don't start your conclusion with words such as in conclusion, to conclude, in summary, to sum up. Those are unnecessary. We tend to do those when we're speaking, because when we're speaking, our audience do not know that we're coming to the end. And the only way that they know that we are coming to the end is if we say in conclusion, to conclude. And so we say that more in speech. When I get to an end of the paper and we get to the last paragraph, we know that last paragraph is the conclusion. So you don't need to add those things. Matter of fact, in 95% of the cases, you can cross those out, and your beginning sentence of your conclusion is going to read stronger. Also, with your conclusion, do not apologize. Some people will tend to apologize in their conclusion by saying things like, this is just my opinion. This is just what I think. I don't think this applies to everything. Don't do that. You've spent a great deal of time working on this paper, putting your ideas there. The reader knows that it's your opinion. So you don't need to put that. And so don't downplay the time and energy that you have taken to write this essay. Make sure that the essay worked for you. And one of the best things that I can advise you to do in terms of looking at how to write introductions, body paragraphs, and conclusion, look at the way the authors write the essays that we've read or that we will read. So one of the first essays that we're going to read is Tatum's, The Complexity of Identity. When you're reading her essay, look at how she starts her introduction. Look at her body paragraphs. Look at her topic sentences, her supporting details, transitions. Look at her conclusion. Look at how she structured her essay. Look at her format. So when you're reading the essays for this course, I don't want you to read them just for their content and the argument that these authors are making. I want you to also look at their essays as models for creating your own essays, how they write introductions, how they write body paragraphs, how they write conclusions. Because what you might find is that there are moves that they might make that you think this works really well. And if it's something that works really well for you as a reader, then it is probably going to work really well for your readers as well. So when you're reading those essays, make sure that you're doing that. For these documents, writing introductions, body paragraphs, and transitions and conclusions, these are documents that you're going to want to revisit as you're writing your papers. So when you get the first paper assignment, go back and reread these documents. After you've written the draft of your paper, you might want to go back and reread these documents as well. So you want to constantly go back to these documents to see how you can better structure these important parts of your papers. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye.